Okay, so now we're going to get into a couple of more problems that involve a little bit more algebra. So now we're going to solve by factoring, and I didn't specify whether we're doing principal values or typically 0 to 360. Well, I'm going to show you a couple instances, probably both, all right? So what we're going to do is solve by factoring. Well, we have a common term in here. So we're going to factor out the sine of x. Okay, so let's go ahead and do that. Sine of x, and that gives me a 1 here, plus cosine of x is equal to 0. And we're using the zero product property all the way back from algebra 1. If a times b is equal to 0, one of these has to be 0. So you're going to set both equal to 0. So we're going to do sine of x is equal to 0, and we're going to do 1 plus cosine of x is equal to 0. Well, sine of x equal to 0 is straightforward. If you look on your unit circle, hopefully memorize, that's your y coordinate. That's going to pop up at 180 degrees. All right, so you have 180 degrees. Over here, we're going to subtract 1. Cosine of x is equal to negative 1. That's your x coordinate on your unit circle. Guess what? That's also 180 degrees. Now, this doesn't happen all the time. It just happens that 180 degrees is our one solution. Okay, moving on. So here we have sine squared x minus 2 sine x is equal to negative 1. We're going to add the 1 to both sides because when we're solved by factoring, we want to set our equations equal to 0. So we're going to do sine squared of x minus 2 sine of x plus 1 is equal to 0. Now this is just like if I had x squared minus 2x plus 1 is equal to 0. This is a perfect square trinomial. What times what is equal to 1 when added together gives you negative 2. And when you factor that, that's just simply x minus 1 times x minus 1 is equal to 0. So it's going to keep it pretty basic. It's going to be the same thing over here. We're going to factor it out. In fact, this is a technique y'all may want to use. Break this up into what you saw in Algebra 1 and then redo it over here. Factoring did not go away. Your algebra teacher was quite correct. So we're going to have sine of x, all right, sine of x minus 1, just like over here, sine of x minus 1 times sine of x minus 1 is equal to 0. Well, these are the same, so I'm just going to set 1 equal to 0. I don't have to set both. Add 1. And then you look on your unit circle, and you're going to find that x has to be 90 degrees. Okay, moving on. So what's going on here? Well, this is already set equal to 0, so we need to figure out how to factor this. Well, if you think about it, I have x squared plus x minus 2 is equal to 0. What times what is equal to negative 2 when added together is equal to a positive 1. And you're going to find that to be 2 and 1, basically. Okay? So I'm going to split this up into cosine x plus 2. Okay, and then cosine x minus 1. All right, and I'm going to set each one equal to 0. So I do cosine x plus 2 is equal to 0. Now watch this. Cosine x is equal to negative 2. Where on your unit circle do you have an x coordinate of 2? You don't. Does not exist. All right, let's see about this puppy. So cosine x minus 1 is equal to 0. Add 1, and we've seen this before. We do have a place where it is, and it is at 0 degrees. Okay? So that is my solution. Moving on. And I always suggest that you pause and work these out. Just don't watch passively. So we have 2 sine squared. This squared should actually probably be right here. Okay? Just out of logic reasons. And what we have here is we have 2x squared plus x minus 3. So if I were to factor this, I would have to think of what times what is equal to negative 6. When added together gives you a positive 1. This is like a little shortcut. And you think of your factors, and I got a positive 3 and a negative 2. So I'm going to break this up into 2x squared. Well, I'll do minus 2x plus 3x minus 3. And when I factor this out, I get x minus 1 And I factor out with that sign, plus 3 times x minus 1. And I have 2x plus 3 and x minus 1. I'm going to have this factored just like that, only I'm going to have sine in there. You take that x and put in sine of x instead. So I'm going to have 2 sine of x plus 3 times sine of x minus 1. Okay, it's equal to 0. Set this one equal to 0. 2 sine of x plus 3 is equal to 0. Subtract 3, divide by 2, and you have sine of x is equal to negative 3 halves. Well, that's outside my range there, my domain as well. So, I mean my range. So we got a bit of a problem. So out comes does not exist. All right. But we can get this one. Sine of x minus 1 is equal to 0. Add 1. And you look on wherever your y coordinate is at 1, and you're going to find it to be 90 degrees. That's your one solution. Okay, so we're going to move on. Let's see, is that it actually? Well, I have some extra practice. Let's go ahead and do these. All right, I forgot about these puppies. All right, now this one is a cautionary tale. In algebra, you'd be very tempted just to divide by cosine of x on both sides, right? That cancels out, and you would just have cosine of x is equal to 1. Well, there's nothing horribly wrong about it other than the fact that you're missing some solution. You want to set this equal to 0. So you're going to have cosine squared of x minus cosine of x is equal to 0. All right? And then you're going to factor out your cosine. And you're going to have cosine of x minus 1 is equal to 0. All right? And you're going to set each one equal to 0. You're going to have cosine of x is equal to 0. And you're going to have cosine x minus 1 is equal to 0, just like you had up here. Okay? These are going to be the same answer. Well, when you look on your unit circle, you're going to have 90 and 270 degrees. And over here, when you have cosine of x is equal to 1, you're going to have 0 and 360 degrees. So by dividing, you would have missed out on these solutions right here. So watch out for those little things. I think I got another one in here. Yes, I do. And so I'm going to subtract cosine on both sides. Okay. I'm going to factor out a cosine because these are common terms. All right. So now I set each one equal to 0. I'm going to do cosine of x is equal to 0. And of course, that's going to be your x coordinate, and you're going to have 90 and 270. That's an ugly 90. All right. And over here, you're going to have 2 sine of x minus 1 is equal to 0. Add 1, divide by 2, and you get sine of x is equal to a positive 1/2. Well, if we're doing our principal values, you're only going to have limited solution. But since let's go ahead and do this. Okay, we'll do that. We look on there and we're going to find 30 and 150. 30 degrees, 150 degrees. All right. And that's pretty much it. So these are all your solutions, possible solutions for this equation right here. Okie dokie, I'm going to call it quits and get this posted.